I'm the captain now. Phil's over here working on something, which means y'all get to deal with amateur hour. A few weeks back, actually I guess a couple months now at this point, I did a kind of first person old school style video where I'm just talking to you guys about the build as I'm going through it, showing you some of the challenges and stuff. You guys really liked that. It was like the way I used to do my channel like way back in the day when it was just me. So while Phil's working on a different project, I'm gonna take you along for some challenges to overcome with my friend's build here that I've been working on, the Mega Man themed build. So you guys can kind of get some food for thought on maybe planning out your builds and not wasting time and money. What's the matter? Oh.
How is anyone supposed to manage these cables?
Yeah, modern PCs feature a lot of fans, RGB components, and daisy chaining cables and connections everywhere, and it's made things really difficult to manage and keep together. Which is why Corsair iQ Link has something completely new coming.
Dude.
So I'll tell you, one of the nicest things to do with any build is get yourself a Lazy Susan. This is a cheap one off Amazon. And then we just got some foam here propping it up because the feet are bigger than the Susan. So when you're working on it and you need to spin it around and stuff, obviously this is a lot easier. But what's not easy is me kind of figuring out this loop. So let's talk about a couple of things here. This is that block that I showed you guys, the momentum block. It's really expensive. Still think it's a bit overpriced for what it is. But anyway, it's in here because it's got a 13900K and we can use all the help we can get on keeping the 13900K cool. Here is the 3090 Strix with the active backplate. So this sort of complicates things a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. And not just the fact that it barely fits in this case. We've already shown the side panel, like when it closes, it actually touches this, but that won't be a problem because it does close all the way. This is the Kinetic, I think it's called the Kinetic. It's the DDC/D5 reservoir pump combo, which fits anywhere a 360 radiator would, because it's basically the same width as like a 120. Hey, that's me right there. Anyway, I've got the D5 installed, as you can see. What I love about this reservoir is the fact that you can use a D5 or a DDC. So you don't have to use one or the other, which is just awesome because usually you would have to make that choice. One of my biggest pet peeves with this, as you can see, we have a fill port up here. This is a fill port, not a return port. And there are no ports at the top. All the ports are at the bottom. So you can see here, this is an outlet. This is I think an outlet as well. I think they're both technically outlets / drain. And this is a drain. So actually, no, this is a return or a drain. So it's just kind of like, okay, we've got two ports facing down right there. As you can see them through the acrylic, they're pointing straight down. There you go. You can see how we have the inlet, which is technically that hole in the center, just gets fed from the reservoir itself. And both of those, I do believe, are outlets, but I'll have to double check the manual. My issue with this is, one of the benefits to having a reservoir like this is have it return at the top. So if I have to have a tube coming all the way down to the bottom, it sort of defeats the purpose of this. So I have a complaint about that. And what I plan on maybe doing with that is I just sent Nick over to the hardware store to get pipe threads, or not pipe threads, pipe taps, and some special drill bits and some countersink bits and stuff, where I've got an extra one of those reservoirs. And I have spare acrylic from other distro plates that I'm not using anymore hanging around the shop, where I think I'm gonna give tapping or drilling and tapping and threading my own return at the top so that I can more easily make this make sense. Because I really don't want a tube going from the upper radiator to the bottom of that reservoir. Running along there would look neat in terms of, like I said, I wanted all kinds of tubing in this build so that it looks like a Mega Man theme level, like a Mega Man level. But that's an EK dropping the ball on that one. It's so easy to add more ports. It's literally drill, tap, and countersink, that's it. And the reason why you do the countersink is you need that kind of a V channel in there for the O-ring to sit against and seal up. And the nice thing is if I screw this one up, I have another one, so I don't have to worry about not being able to utilize it if I need to in the future. But I'm gonna be practicing quite a bit on other acrylic. But what I'm also debating doing too is on the backside, maybe right here or something, having another port that I drain or that I put in there for a drain on the backside. Ideally, I'd want the drain to be at the lowest point possible, which is why that one is right there. The problem is once I have a radiator and stuff sitting right here, I can't access that one very well. So again, I wanted this reservoir to fill out this spot, but if it interferes, and let me show you. So as you can see, once the radiator is installed, which is just a 30 mil thick rad, and these are 30 mil also thick fans and not, actually I think they're 28 mil. They're 28 mil thick fans, 30 mil rad. You can see now it blocks those ports. So a drain there doesn't do me much good, which also now brings up the next point that I'm gonna have to get from those fittings right there at the bottom, which is the outlet from the pump, over to here somehow. So now you can see why I'm debating putting a drain back here somewhere, only because of the fact that even if I can only get the coolant down this low, that still would allow me to do a full drain on the upper rad and all of the reservoir, and then the lower rad and stuff would still have fluid in it. But the thing is, if I'm going to drain this loop, and every loop should be considered with drain, like some sort of drain built in, otherwise you're gonna hate life when you go to try and get it all out. Because what I can do is get it lowered to that point. This will still be full of fluid. The bottom of the reservoir would still be full of fluid, but then once it's all sealed back up, if I flip this case completely over 180, then this becomes my new drain right here. So I've done it before, it's just a complete pain in the butt. But let me show you what I'm kind of gonna have to come up with for this. So I've got these Corsair fittings. I've got 90s, I've got 45s, I've got double swivels, etc. Hopefully it's in focus. If you guys are wondering, they look so similar to Bits Power because Bits Power is the ODM. I believe they're the ODM. They're like exactly the same. Here, so I've got a double 90 here, like 240, or well, two 90s. And what I would do is kind of like thread them together like this. And it kind of stinks because anytime you put a 90 in there, even though if you look inside, you can see it's kind of rounded. It's kind of hard to see in there. It is rounded. Anytime you add a 90, you increase the resistance of the loop. And what I need to see now is if I do this, can I get this to clear over the top of the rad? You can also see now why having these fittings go back up, looking like a periscope here, is lots of places for fluid to get trapped, unfortunately. Now what I could do too is I could do a 90 straight down off that fitting, and then do some sort of a hole right here in the bottom of the case and have a drain right there, but I really don't want to do that because there's also like a structural piece right here in the case and I don't want to drill through that. Also, before I plug this in, I want to confirm this is the outlet, this is a return. So that's a drain/return, and then this is also a return. And this would be the preferred return to use probably because you can see it's got this little kind of an anti-vortex deal right there. So that would be the ideal return, which means my tubing would have been coming all the way across to the right and down and returning in there. And I just don't want to do that. I'm really hoping drilling and tapping this acrylic works out and it seals and doesn't leak. That way I can more neatly have something at the top. So that, oh man, that might not be high enough. See, ugh. Everything is always based off 25 mil thick fans, and you can see by having 28, those extra 3 millimeters really kind of get in the way there. Shoot, like I was like, maybe that'll line up, but it doesn't. So it's still gonna just need to go the other way. Boo. So here's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna put down the camera, I'm gonna sort of figure some of this out, and then I'll show you what I've got. So this is where you start to realize just how small the H9 is. So I'm starting to fill in the components, right? You can see I've got the top rad in there with the fans, the bottom rad in there with the fans, the reservoir. You can see that with the double 90, the way I have it right there, it doesn't quite go up high enough to allow me to go horizontally across the rad. As you can see, the fitting is pointing up because it's actually interfering with the rad. Now, yeah, I can slide this up a little bit. There is a little bit of slide, come on, focus. There's a little bit of slide that is available on the rear. I can't go up too far though, or I won't be able to access that fill port because it can actually go up far enough to where it's behind those fans and then I can't get to that. The other thing is once you start putting things in the case, you start to realize just how much room you don't have. For instance, check this out. That rear fitting back there, that guy right, focus. That guy right there doesn't want to focus. Stupid camera. That guy is completely, look at that. There is no way I'm getting a tube to come out of that fitting in the back and across over to here. So this is now where I need to flip the radiator around. I'm not gonna have any choice unless I go through there, that hole. So have it come across, go through this wall somehow, and then return on the back side. Like I would drill it back here. The EPS power has to use that same hole, and then it's gonna start getting really crowded through there. So I need to test fit now, flip the rad around with the ports on this side, which would be convenient to have my return, because then I could just right into wherever I drill it. And then my CPU tube would go this way instead of going that way. And I think that would be the better option, because that's not gonna work right there. All right, so it's flipped around now. You can see the ports are on this side. At least it lines up with like right in this area, which is perfect for me to do my return there if I want. I would do it down here in the lower side. I need the level to be higher than the return or it'll bubble and make noise. I can still access this technically. I have a little bit of room, because now what I can do is I can go ahead and slide up the reservoir a little bit to be able to make this level. And I'm gonna go up as high as I can to where I can still access this port right here with my squeeze bottle, which has a little like a straw on it. So it doesn't have to be completely below the fan. It could be obstructed a little bit, but now I've got to kind of fine tune everything in here. And this actually works out pretty well too, because the exit of this block is on the right. The inlet's on the left, the exit's on the right. So that puts it on the side I need it to go to instead of crossing over somehow over to there. Okay, so that's working out pretty well. I could even go higher with it if I wanted, but this should be plenty, because now you can see it's not touching the fan. And any amount that I raise this up is gonna help the bend I have to make down here. So ideally I would want some sort of an extension tube and then a 90-degree fitting and just a straight piece of pipe. But I'm gonna end up having to do a 90 down into here. And it's gonna be an interesting piece of tubing, because this fitting is not on the same plane perpendicular. So if it were like out here, then it would be a straight run to a 90. So I'm gonna have to go out, do like a kink, like a little 45 kink or something in there, and then down. I think it'll still work out well, because this build, like this case, has enough 45-degree accents in it. So right, we've got it sort of happening here on the block. We've got it sort of happening like those 45-degree angles on the motherboard, all those 45s. And obviously we've got a lot happening down here. And with it being horizontal, it won't be that noticeable. So I'll try that. I won't be bending that pipe today, but I'm just kind of showing you guys the planning steps, and then the next video in this build will be bending that stuff. But I can't bend anything until I at least get most of this sort of aligned. You can see the drain plug is out right there, because I needed to make sure I could still access it. As you can see, it's like barely kind of obscured by the fan. But because I am using like a rounded end, I can get to it at an angle and not have to be straight on with it. And as long as I can access this, as you can see, sorry for the squeaks, that's the O-ring, that will work. I don't have a lot of adjustment in the radiator. And this is what sort of sucks, because you can see it sort of fits in the groove, because remember that's a drop-in plate. The radiator fits on this tray, but inside the tray is this groove that it has to fit in. So as you can see, the radiator is already just about touching it. Same thing on the back side. So I could slide it rearward a little bit if I needed to, but not much. So it's one of those things where like, you're really stuck with it being in one position with maybe 3 millimeters of adjustment, which isn't a lot. But if I line up directly along there, you can see those fittings do give me an area right there where I can drill a return. Anyway, when Nick comes back, we'll do a test drill in some spare acrylic. All right, so here's some spare acrylic. I've also got a spare Phil now who is handling the camera for me while I do this. This is a G quarter thread pipe fitting, or excuse me, tap. So I also have to use a 7/16, I don't know what that is in millimeter, but 7/16 drill hole, which is the right size for the hole. Actually feels like it might be a little bit on the bigger side. Now here's the thing, I'm gonna be doing this with a hand drill. Ideally, this needs to be done with a, ooh, barely. Okay, anyway, this is like a countersink that I would need to taper those edges, like I said, for the O-ring. I think it's slightly too small, so I need to get a bigger one. Ideally, I'd be using a drill press for this. That way I can have a perfectly vertical hole. Fortunately, because the material's so thin, it's not like it being slightly off at a degree or two would be that big of a deal, but do it right, you need a drill press, and I don't have one of those. But I need to drill a pilot hole. And what I wanna sort of just figure out here is if I can do this without one, cracking the acrylic, it's the O-ring from it, and then two, like not splintering it, etc. Will it work? So I'm gonna start with a smaller drill bit to drill a pilot hole. On the back side, you need something to keep it from splintering out. Just gonna use our table. I drill into this all the time. You can see drill holes everywhere, and I can fill it in with putty if I ever needed to. But let's just, first of all, see. I think I'm going into the wood now. Okay, there's my hole. No, there's my hole. It did not splinter or crack, which is great. But now that I'm gonna be going with the bigger bit, you gotta go slow, because if you go too fast and push too hard, that's what's gonna make it crack. Oh, see, it cracked it right there, because I think I was trying to go a little, this might even be the wrong kind of bit. See what happens if I go fast now.
I think it's cracking.
I don't think it
It looks like a ballistics gel like, impact.
Okay, I think I'm gonna need a different bit. Okay, so like an hour's passed, and I actually got a good one. So that's original. This is one we did, and that was a take. We actually just said, don't show that one. I'll show you the right technique. That one was actually at an improper angle, because hand tools, to do this right, I need a drill press. I don't have a drill press, but I'm doing the best I can. You can see a few more failed attempts, but then this one has that tiny little chip right there, which is actually very smooth, and the O-ring, the thickness of the O-ring on these fittings will seal it, but I don't want that chip in there, obviously. But let me show you what one of the major differences that I did was. So I think you guys saw, I was trying to tape it down, and I went, you know what, I'm gonna use my clamps. I literally had clamps on the wall behind me. I'm sure you guys were like, Jay, use the freaking clamps that are on the wall behind you. Here they are. So I'm gonna come to this side of the table, and I'm gonna do another hole. I love the innuendos that are in this video. I'm gonna do another take over here, because I have to be able to do this consistently without damage to the acrylic. Otherwise, I don't want to just waste one for the sake of trying, if that makes sense. I want to make sure I've got the process down. Now, what I'm gonna do with the one I wanna preserve is I'm gonna do all kinds of like painter's tape on it to protect it so it's not being scratched up. So only the area I'm working with will be exposed. I don't want it scratched up on the table. This is a spare piece of acrylic, so I don't really care. But I did it basically the same, but I used water. This is just distilled water, and I used the water to keep the threads cool, or the acrylic cool, and then the threads somewhat lubricated. Like there's probably a better material that I could use, but the water actually worked really, really well. So here we go. I'll do another one right here. Pilot hole is pretty simple. Just, there you go, we're through. And I need to clean it out. And I'm gonna do a lot of water right there. And then I'm just gonna slowly, like before, just let it start kind of chiseling away at the plastic. So all that water is just sort of staying in the hole. That really allows it to stay lubricated and cool. Doesn't melt the plastic as much as it's cutting the plastic. Because we don't want the plastic to melt, we want it to cut. See, the thing that would make a drill press nice is the drill press can't jump. See all this wobbling in my hands? The drill press doesn't do that, so it can stay very consistent with the pressure. So I'm actually having to really focus on the amount of pressure I give it when I start going. The moment it jumps and chatters, that's when problems start. Look at that. And that's what happens when it starts to go through the hole on the backside. So I have to start to feel when it's gonna break through and then really slow down. Because that's when I end up getting that chip. And I also have to be good about cleaning my hole out as frequently as possible. Good hygiene in your holes. So I started, you can see a little line in there. See how it started to bite a little bit too much? So here's another technique I learned. I don't know if you can see that, Phil. It's on this side, there's a straight line in the hole. Because it started to bite too hard, that's when it would have jumped, but I felt it, but now I'm gonna go backwards on it. And I sort of smooth that out. So now the line's gone, because I'm using the back side of the bit. Now I should be able to just start again. Oh, see, there it is. Let's try it again. There we go. See, I cut through it, and I didn't cause myself any damage. Look at that. Look at that. So let's go ahead and take this off. Let go! That's the hole I just did right there. Look how clean that is. It's beautiful. So now I'm gonna do this just to sort of ream it through. Now, I'm gonna take this bit and I'm gonna do a high-speed pass. So this is gonna smooth out the edges. I don't want the sharp edges to cut my O-ring, so. And I'm liking that I'm doing this right next to my bad attempts. Look at that. That almost looks like it was machined. It was machined by this machine. All right, so now I need to tap it. I need to clean out the threads in it as much as possible. Keep the hole nice and wet. And the thing is, because the hole is fairly straight, and this is where having a T-handle would be nice because I could give it perfect pressure downward. That looks right about there. Okay, looks like we're pretty vertical there. Got to keep it clean. So now I just keep working it back and forth, keep it filled with water. What I need to do is I need to mark this tap on the appropriate depth. Remember, it is tapered. So because it's tapered, I could go too far and make it too loose. Perfectly usable hole. Look at that. That's a pretty hole, if I don't say so myself. Now compare that with the Singularity Computers one. They look pretty damn similar, don't they? Boom. Yeah, you can see on the backside the O-ring is most definitely squished, although it might be like a half a degree, quarter of a degree off. All right, fine. That's where we'll end this video because this one is ever so slightly off. You can see it if you look that way. It's a little higher on this side. Close enough for hand, but not good enough for the job I want to do. Like this one's straight. The one I did that has a little chip on it, check out this one. That was straight. There are no issues with that one. Actually, no, it's off that way. I'm gonna get a drill press, and then I'm gonna do it for real in the next video. This is what I love. It's like Bob Ross said, there's no mistakes, just happy little accidents. Like me.